It is 16 degrees and snowing in Alabama. We are not used to this way down here in the deep south. It's just something that happens all the time. Anyway, it is snowing. It's beautiful. We get the occasional flurries and things like that, but this is not normal for us. This is kind of chilly. Technically, actually, this isn't even snow. This is a form of winter precipitation called graupel. Well, there's lots of different kinds of winter precipitation. There's sleet and snow and graupel and these different things. What exactly causes the differences in these forms of precipitation? Come on, I'll show you. The type of precipitation that's produced in the wintertime all depends on the way that the atmosphere is layered temperature-wise. Let me show you what I mean. Up in the cloud tops, up here, we're going to have freezing temperatures, okay? It's wintertime. Down on the ground, though, we might or might not have freezing temperatures. So what happens if we have freezing temperatures? If it is freezing, I'll use my blue marker here. If it is freezing from here all the way down to the ground, we're going to have snowflakes that are forming way up here at the tops of these clouds. We're going to have all these snowflakes, okay? If it's freezing all the way down to the ground, then what ends up happening is none of those snowflakes melt. They fall as snow all the way to the ground. So if it's all cold, freezing temperatures from the cloud tops to the ground, then when this precipitation forms, we get snow. Now, if there's supercooled water mixed in with this, the supercooled water will act as almost like a glue, and it's going to stick these snowflakes together into what we call graupel. And that's literally, it's like a little clump of snowflakes as it falls to the ground. So snow and graupel all happen when the freezing temperatures reach all the way from the clouds all the way down to the ground. Now, what happens when we have freezing up here, right? So here's our snowflakes, okay? We have freezing temperatures up, that's a weird G. There we go. We have freezing temperatures way up there, but we have a layer of warm air that comes across right like this. So here's this layer of warm air right there. What happens then? Well, what happens then, if that warm air it's a smaller layer, it's aloft, then as this freezing, these snowflakes, as it hits that warm layer, they melt into water, but then as they pass back into another freezing layer here that reaches down to the ground, as they refreeze, that's what forms sleet. It forms these little tiny white pellets of different sizes, but little tiny white pellets that you can physically hear as they're falling. They'll hit, tink, and bounce, right? And that's what sleet is. So the snowflakes occur at the tops of the clouds because it's freezing, but they pass through a warm layer of air, they melt, and then they pass back through a freezing layer, and therefore they hit the ground frozen as tiny little pellets. That's what forms sleet. So what if we have our freezing temperature up here? Just drop my pen. Our freezing temperature up here. So here's our snowflakes. And then we have a thick warm layer. So in our freezing temperature, we have a thicker warm layer. This is all warm right through there. But it's freezing here at ground level. So what happens then? Then snowflakes form. As it falls into the warm air, it melts, turns into a liquid, and continues to fall, but there's not enough time down here for that water to refreeze before it hits. So it hits the ground as liquid, but then refreezes once it's on the ground. That is what produces freezing rain. So freezes, snowflakes, falls, melts, and then hits the ground as a liquid, and then refreezes once it strikes the ground. Now, the last group we have our freezing temperature up here. So we have our snowflakes, there they are. But then it's warm from here all the way down to the ground. If that's the condition, then what ends up happening is you have the freezing, snowflakes form, passes into the warm, but it never cools back down. And so when it lands as rain. And that's the different types of winter precipitation that can occur. You can have the snow or graupel, where the snowflakes form high on top of the clouds, fall to the ground, staying in freezing air layers the whole way down, never thaws, never melts, so it hits the ground as snow or graupel. If it passes through a thin warming layer aloft, a little bit higher up, that snow then at the tops of the clouds will melt, turn into a liquid precipitation, but then refreeze before it hits the ground. That's sleet, those little tiny pellets. If it passes through a large warming layer before it hits a freezing layer on the ground, it will hit the ground as liquid and then freeze upon impact, and that is freezing rain. But if it passes through those warm layers and it stays above freezing all the way to the ground, that's what produces rain. And those are your different forms of winter precipitation.